business. It's business time. I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say it's time for business. It's business time. Ooh, it's business. It's business time. Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast, guys. Here we are, Information Brokers. Will Hudson here. Hit that like, subscribe button on the YouTube video. Stat. Welcome in. We're sitting here with Dusty Labossiere, our Chief Growth Officer for Century 21 Results.
The title's been nixed. It's Integrator now.
Integrator.
Yeah, Chief Growth Officer's dead.
So you guys are real good at facilitating the corporate lingo into the system quite like nimbly. It sounds like you guys are nimble with the corporate speak.
Well, so, our former COO, Robert Shepard, retired at the beginning of the tail end of the year. So I think Terry wanted to get rid of putting the COO title back out there to eliminate the assumption that I would be taking his exact job role.
Right.
What Robert was doing and what he had done over the course of, I don't know how many years he was at the brokerage, were vital and essential to growing the company. But I think there were some things that, moving forward, we wanted to phase out of that position. And so I think that was part of his strategy. And, Terry probably just thought Chief Growth Officer sounded good. I guess
he totally did. That sounds like Terry.
In a way, I guess it sounds okay. I mean, it was cool to have a C-suite in front of my name. But
right.
So really, at the end of the day, we're just taking EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, out of Traction, which is a book by Gino Wickman.
Right.
And we're using that as an operating system for the entire company. Within that, they have a model that is called a visionary integrator model. So it's kind of like a yin and yang of business partners. And, each one has their strengths and weaknesses. You're aware of both of them. You meet on a regular basis and work through things like that.
All right.
What he's good at, I'm not, he's going to have natural abilities that I don't, vice versa. And so we just kind of.
No, I get it. You're playing off each other's strengths and then, covering for each other's weaknesses, it sounds like, or at least trying to eliminate the weaknesses you can. I actually have not cracked open Traction yet. I have it. I know that you had suggested it. It's for anybody that wants to be in a leadership role that has at least not a solo, I guess not a solo enterprise. It really wouldn't work for, is what it sounds like. It's more like a two-pronged assault where you have a visionary who is, scheming, essentially not, I guess that sounds negative, like they're going to rob a bank or something. But you know what I'm saying? Like they're essentially coming up with the vision, and then the facilitator or the integrator integrates that vision in a functional way. Is that a good way to describe it, or is there more to it? Obviously there's more to it than that, but is that a good overview?
Yes, definitely good overview. I would say, visionaries are going to be good at closing big deals, external relationships. They're driving culture. They're the relational facing figure of the company, and the integrator is going to take. They are the leadership, management, accountability. They're the installation of ideas. So you can have shiny ideas. It's the question of whether or not the shiny ideas get done. And I think if you've been in business long enough, we've probably been around it where we go. We got super excited about 3 or 4 different things. We pushed it out. We started to gain traction in it, and then maybe there wasn't anybody overseeing the implementation of that thing into the company. And that takes a lot of repetition, cadence, pointing all the arrows in one direction. And that's really what it boils down to. So, from as a little kid, before I would go to bed at night, my whole room was clean, everything was organized, everything was in its right spot. My paper airplanes from the Scholastic Book Fair were in their cubby, diagonal.
So you've always had OCD.
I've always been that way, dude.
Sounds like me.
I've always had my things squared away. I've just thought like that, and so it's easy to put it, and then both of them need to be somewhat competent in the other's natural abilities enough to talk shop.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, and this is my kind of outlook on the whole thing. Is like, when I first started, I'm OCD about some things in my life, not all things. I think I'm very OCD about I've got to have a system, but I think where I fall short is I will plan and plan and plan and I'll make such a complicated, well formulated, plan, but it complicated that I'll get about 3/4 of the way through, and then I'm like, shit. Like, here's this other thing that I want to do, and then that thing is not fully fleshed out or integrated. Haha. And I move on to the other thing, and I've done exactly what you're saying as a visionary, but I have not integrated it fully into what I want to do with my system that I have in place.
The important thing is that you have an operating system. It doesn't have to be EOS, doesn't have to be traction, doesn't have to be anything that I'm talking about. What's important is that you have it.
Totally. And what I'm getting at here is that, like, I feel like and again, I need to read the book before I go too deep with this, but what I gather from it is the partnership you have between visionary and integrator it's essentially, the starting and ending point of a series of events or systems or whatever it is that you come up with. Like you said, the bright, shiny idea, and the integrator goes into integrating it into the system, making it a reality.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I can respect that. But it's interesting what you guys are doing at the brokerage level right now. And we actually had this conversation earlier today. Graham and I are doing where I kind of get crap from some of the other agents in the office, like, how's the system build out going? Because I'm constantly talking about back-end systems and backloading things and doing this and doing that. And a lot of people are like, dude, at what point do you start selling real estate? And so my point is, well, yeah, I'm selling it all the way through this. But to your statement just then, like, you got to have something, And when I first started as an independent agent, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go to these appointments. I'm going to get in front of clients. I'm going to sell properties, rinse and repeat, and not really have anything in place. I might have a lead source or two that I'm working. I might, if I'm relational, I might go out and be social or put together some newsletters and just kind of throw a bunch of shit at the wall, and some stuff would stick and some stuff wouldn't. And what I realized very quickly when I built out my team is that that shit doesn't work with a team, and it doesn't. I guess it can, but you're constantly feeling like you're underwater or drowning or playing catch up, and you don't really have something that is facilitating future growth. Like, I feel like when I realized, hey, we need to have systems, we need to have a CRM, we need to have a marketing integration into that CRM. We need to have a process at which the agents can go in. And I do the 3-lane system. Have I talked about that on the podcast, the 3-lane thing? Do you remember this? No,
I don't believe it.
Okay, so I feel like, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, so I'd love to get your feedback on this. Is how I recruit new agents. I talk about, like, what I'm trying to do in my team for them as the team lead. And I also talk about this with my current agents about this is what I want them doing in order to make a lot of money. I call it the 3-lane system. So the first lane is like prospecting, doing activities that are going to get you in front of clients, making cold calls, expired calls, whatever it is, whatever your type of prospecting niche is, if it's any and all of the above, great. But that's the first lane, right? And then the second lane, the middle lane that I talk about, that's the lane that's really making you money. They're the client-facing activities, like you're showing properties, you're having buyer consultations, you're going on listing appointments, you're discussing a strategy in which you're going to market the property for that specific listing. You're coming up with CMAs, things like that in that middle lane. That's where the money is really made. And then the third lane is what I call the unemployment line. It's a great line from one of my former brokers was like, he said, I hate closings. And I was like, well, I mean, that's my favorite part. That's when I get paid. And he's like, that's also when you become unemployed. And I was like, well, shit. Like, because I've been in the corporate world for a long time at that point. I was like, I didn't really think of it like that. So to me, the 3-lane approach, the way that I pitch this is I say, if you quantify these 3 lanes into what they are, what I'm trying to accomplish is automation on the first lane and the third lane. so that you live as an agent in the middle. And I want to automate prospecting by way of bringing in an ISA, which we talked about before, all these other things that we can get into in this podcast if you want. But you want to automate as much of the prospecting as possible for obvious reasons. And then people are like, well, what are you talking about? You're automating closing? Well, yeah, no. I mean, I'm still going on closings unless they're like an investor closing or something. You don't really have to be there for it. But what I'm talking about is the thing that happens after the closing, which is the follow-up and staying top of mind, and then asking for your closed clients' referral business, and then staying on top of that so that you're creating a loop feed, a whatever you call it, a feedback loop. So it's going from front to back to front in a constant circle, the circle of life, if you will, the circle of sales life. But so
bust down the
circle of life. Come on, you want to. You got it.
Yeah,
that's it. I love that one. My kid does that. Yeah. So you get what I'm saying. So, I mean, to me, when I realized that I needed to do that for myself as a team lead, because I was just telling you, like, a lot of the overhead when you first start a team is completely on you as the team lead, because you're the rainmaker. And there isn't really a rainmaker that's making you a lot of money. You're not making a lot of money on if you're giving everybody a fair share of it, you're not going to make a ton of money until you get higher producing agents. And typically higher producing agents aren't just flocking to join a team that's just been newly formed. You've got to create those agents and teach them how to do it. So to me, that's the 3-lane system that I kind of came up with. And then I thought, okay, I've got to have these systems to automate the shit that I'm talking about automating. I can't just, you know what I mean? I can't just snap my fingers and that automate it on its own, So that's kind of what I spelled out. I like to think in simple forms so that I don't, because I have a tendency to overcomplicate things. And that was the simplest way to distill it down for me, to figure out, okay, this is how I need to be running my business. And this is also how I need to be setting up my team members for success. And then also using that, the way that I use it for recruitment is very simple. I'm saying, hey, if you join my team, you're going to be doing the things that you enjoy most. I'd say 99% of agents don't enjoy doing a bunch of admin work and nonsense prospecting stuff that's really not ultimately creating money in their wallet at the time of making that happen. So that's kind of how I pitch it to them. Like, hey, how would you like me to automate this stuff so you can live in the middle where it really makes you money?
Yeah. So sales is just the skill of influence. That's all it is, right? Mm-hmm. That's what sales is. And so I did well sales as an agent. And so I'm just taking that skill set now and I'm just turning it inward facing to the company. So there's the skill of influence when you're leading, managing, holding people accountable for operations within the company. If you bring the same energy and the same skill set to the people that you work with internally, it still has powerful results, just like production does on the front end. And so that was helpful for me to realize, like, I still am in production. That's the way I look at it, right? And that was kind of just me realizing it's the same thing. It's the same way I talk to people. It's the same way I structure conversations. If I talk with Terry, if I talk with any other staff member, there's still skilled conversations that happen in that when you're trying to get to an end result.
Right.
It's the same thing. And you want to try and simplify things as much as possible, especially when it comes to trying to teach a bunch of, because there is a real... Money is very easy to understand from a budget standpoint, but we also, I think there's a big lacking in grasping with the concept of having a budget for time for people in the industry too. I have a certain amount of time I can dedicate to work before I'm stealing from my family, before I'm stealing from things that I want to do outside of work, right?
Right.
So I have to take a finite amount of time, just like I do with a finite amount of dollars, and I have to go, how do I use this time to do what I want to get done? And then every new idea, every new system you create has a pretty high cost to it, because you have to, A, create it, which takes pretty intense amounts of bandwidth.
I absolutely know what you're talking about.
And then once you create it, then there's the added challenge of providing the bridge to go teach staff members or other agents or admin or whoever else it is on the team. And if you're constantly moving things and swapping it around, that's what they talk about in the book too. A classic symptom in a negative way from a visionary is what's called whiplash or organizational whiplash. You start throwing out too many ideas and they don't get implemented well, and you're throwing out new ideas on top of that when you haven't even built the 2 or 3 things that you were talking about initially.
You're like paralyzed to the moment at that point, right?
Everybody starts feeling the frustration and like abrasion from like, well, we haven't even done this yet. Now we're jumping over to like these 3 things over here. We're spread thin. We can't even do these things well. And so you should know your business well enough to go like, which ideas are worth actually implementing. And I think,
is there a process that you go through to figure that out? Like, is there something like, I know you, man, and I know there's something like that you're, I mean, are you just, is it as simple as you just whiteboarding the shit out of it?
Here's one good example.
Okay.
As we put the ISA department into play at the company,
okay,
the big problem with not having an ISA department was that the company was buying leads, and we were basically throwing them out to random agents that we had gut intuition that might handle them well. We didn't really have that good of a system. If we did, a CRM, we weren't really using it that well to track it. So there's this big hole in the bottom of the bucket. We're spending money, we can't track it, we don't know which lead sources are performing well, or at least if Sarita's listening to this or anybody else, it just wasn't where it needed to be at, right? So as we put the ISA department in, and this was a conversation I had with Terry because he pulled the trigger on 2 other lead sources that don't make sense for our model. For example, any lead source, there's 2 buckets that you can buy leads in. You can get bucket A, like Realtor.com, you pay for them, and we don't have to go back to Realtor.com and tell them what we're doing with their leads. There's no CRM, there's no referral system on the back end. Those are our leads, we buy them.
And they're much more expensive.
They're more expensive, but think about this. It takes Sold.com. Terry just pulled the trigger on those, right?
As did I.
They're 35% on the back end, right? And you can pay for them up front too, but they're less expensive than like Realtor.com or whatever.
The way it works is you do pay for them up front. There is an upfront cost that you pay per
like an
zip code. Yeah, it's almost, it's like a yearly, it's not onboarding even. It's like a yearly, hey, pay to play and then pay on the back end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the jury's still out for me on the quality of that lead source.
The main point is a company is now paying wages for VAs and staff members to manage these CRMs. So
sure.
We have a VA that is updating 10 different portal sites for all of these referrals, which we pay him by the hour, and then I have to stop what I'm doing, or our ISA department has to stop what we're doing, and then teach that VA how to update these new CRMs. So now they're checking in. Now we have to go bother agents to give us updates so that Eric, our VA, knows to go to all these CRMs to update them on time. Otherwise, we're out of sync with all of it. We're behind. So I went to Terry and I was like, hey, before you pull the trigger on another lead source, let me know, because I would much rather pick bucket A, which makes more sense for our model. Like, let's pay a premium for leads that we don't have to be accountable to a third party. Because right now we have 15 other CRMs that are a complete shit show to update on a regular basis. And so that's one example of critically thinking about, does it make sense? Like, if I could reverse time and tell Terry not to buy Sold.com, I would have told him to.
Yeah.
No, we paid for it. We're going to do it. We're going to run it. We'll do it the best that we can. It's not the end of the world. I would just say, before moving forward, let's have that conversation and see if it's a good fit for our model. Now, for an individual agent or maybe a smaller team, it might make more sense. For us, it doesn't make sense. We already have so many leads coming through. It's not a good play for us.
I get it. I mean, and I'm in an advantageous spot in terms of if you think about the brokerage is a massive vessel. It takes the Titanic doesn't turn on a dime. I'm the speedboat to the Titanic. I can turn and pivot a little bit more fluidly than you guys are able to. But having said that, we've been kind of playing with this idea. And what's interesting about this, Dusty and Jeff, I talked to you because me and Dusty talked about this directly, so it doesn't seem like I'm rehashing a conversation that's already been had. But one thing that's cool about me and Dusty is I'll be like, hey, we're dabbling with the same things. And like today was a prime example. We're integrating an ISA through our CRMs, which we both use. I actually introduced the brokerage a little bit to that through
By
another.
the way, I'm going to Follow Boss Master Level Up on
Are you?
Tuesday and Wednesday.
I want to. Yeah, I definitely want to pick your brain about that when you come back.
Telling you anything.
You're gonna tell me everything, or I will cut you. I will cut you. He knows that I'll cut him. Jesus, I was just joking. That's a joke, man. Put that knife away. He's gonna get me with the pen now. I'm more intimidated by the pen, really, because I'm like, is this some John Wick shit we're about to go through, or
yeah,
he's gonna take out the whole room with a freaking pen, man.
I normally carry, but I don't carry on a bike because it jams into my waist the whole time.
Yeah, well, that sounds like an Ace Ventura quote that I could just go right into. But I'm gonna forgo that and be the bigger, more adult person in the room here. No. Oh my God, man, that went.
You gotta stay strapped in Forsyth and Cherokee County.
Oh yeah,
It's
I mean
rough
the
up
mean
here.
streets. I mean we're really dealing with
Lake.
it.
Yeah,
Town Lake
Lake.
is look, man. I'm a grizzled vet of Town Lake's hardcore culture. Yeah, the
yoga
yeah.
moms, man.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to what we were saying, what's interesting about us is that
I would say, for not to lose track here, I would say for most people, if you're prone to the shiny object syndrome, is to at least have somebody you can bounce ideas off of, or just be intimately aware that you're prone to it, and you should maybe sleep on it for like a day before you say yes to it, and think about whether or not it makes sense to draw it in to the company.
So what's interesting, and what I was going to get to, and what I think is interesting about how you and Terry are working together at the brokerage level, is how me and Graham work together now, where I feel like I'm probably the visionary of the two, whereas I think either one of us could be the visionary, and either one of us could be the integrator. But I feel like if we were trying to do both, we wouldn't be focused enough on one or the other to actually get anything done. So, I typically think that right now, I probably fit the visionary mold more than I do the implementer, because he's actually doing the implementation, as you are with Terry, right? So what was interesting was we were talking about this earlier, like bring on an ISA, and we're going to roll out to the team this next week this really cool thing where it's like, hey, I want to make it to where my team wakes up in the morning, they check their follow-up boss schedule, and it's got like a whole bunch of predetermined buyer consultations and listing appointments that RSA has set up for them. So they can quite literally go in and just start living in that middle lane. That is the real estate team utopia that I'm trying to make here. And we were talking about it because you're already doing a similar kind of model on a much grander scale. So I don't want to like diminish it in any way. I'm actually doing it with like 15 people versus God knows how many you're doing it with now. But we're about to roll it out, and I'm talking about how we're going to implement it. It's funny, I talked to Devin, who works with you closely, really talented guy. I talked to him about being on the podcast, too. We're going to have him on. But we're literally, the thing that me and Graham came up with was identical to what you guys are already doing. So my whole point was it's very similar. Like we think in a similar fashion. For the people that out there that don't think the way that we do, how do those people fit into the system? Or let's say we're talking and there's team leaders or even independent agents out there that are trying to take something from this, what we're talking about. How would you best be able to say, hey, this is how you can take what we're trying to do and implement it into your business to see some success? Or is it something that maybe only people that think a certain way could really find success with, in your opinion?
I think the smartest way to go, the most efficient way to go about getting what you want is finding out what you want. And I think that's kind of hard to figure out. That might actually be the hardest thing to figure out.
I think you're treading dangerously close to fuck around and find out.
Is he trying to cut me again?
I
Sounds
just that's
like
right.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like another
I don't know
threat.
if you guys are going to get out of this room alive.
know.
So.
I mean this wholeheartedly. I think figuring out what you want is actually pretty difficult.
Right.
In fact, for me, it took me trying a bunch of things I didn't want until I figured out what I did. And I tell people in passing that if you know what you want, that's a blessing, because you can go find people that have it, and then you can reverse engineer everything from there. So Like if you want to be a top producing team lead, if you want to have your own company, if you want to be a professional snowboarder, whatever, you can go seek those people out. And I would urge people, go find them, bring them out to lunch, ask them a bunch of questions, connect with them, and figure out what have they done from here all the way to here, and you can emulate it. You don't even have to recreate the wheel in a lot of these cases. Like most of it's already been done. You can just now go back and figure out what that is. And in real estate, there's the big difference. This is where I see most agents fail on getting to where they want to go or getting to the next, getting past the bottleneck, is there's working on the business and in the business. You cannot get past the bottleneck if you don't work on the business. Most agents are...
Can you define those two things? I know the definition, but for everybody out there, could you define working on the business versus working in the business?
Yeah, so it's going to feel so counterproductive when you work on the business because it's not necessarily direct. You know, you have all your inputs into business. Like for me as an individual agent, direct input was making phone calls, setting appointments, doing presentations, closing deals.
The middle lane, essentially.
In my input, I could immediately feel an output right away. Right now, any input I put into the company, this is what I was talking to with Terry, it's weird for me because I'm so used to such an immediate response to what I do. Now it's taking 90 to 180 days. Like, I won't see results on my input for a while because now it has to filter through a bunch of other people. So the difference between it, like examples, you know, let's take like an individual agent. I would say like taking a Sunday afternoon to time block the rest of your week. Taking time to read through books that might help you with business planning. Taking time to become more aware of like your blind spots, what you're good at, what you aren't, right? Maybe it's your admin work. Maybe it's your systems. Maybe it's your prospecting. Instead of actually doing those things. A lot of agents they're in reaction mode. That's all they do. I'm going to look at my email inbox until something comes in. I'm going to go to the water cooler and talk with somebody for 30 minutes about stuff. I'm going to go in the office and feel like I'm productive, but I'm not. I'm just having conversations with Greg about the Lakers game or whatever. So it's all about being intentional, like really carving out your time. I'm a big fan of calendars. I'm a big fan of time blocking. I'm a big fan of like really understanding at the end of the day, time is more valuable than your money.
Absolutely. I couldn't. This is what's funny to me. The calendar, getting to the calendar thing, I think the calendar is probably the most fundamental tool in my entire business. Like if I could think of one thing that led to more profitability and more of my success than any other one thing, it would be becoming I'll just say a slave to my calendar. Like, so when people are like, man, what's it like to work, like you're self-employed and all that kind of thing. I'm like, well, I actually have a boss and it's Google Calendar. Like that is my boss. Like it tells me what to do. And now that I have an assistant who then schedules things into it, I literally, before I do anything, I've got to look at what is going on in the calendar because it's telling me exactly what I have to do every day. If you can't do that as an agent, you're probably not scaling. You're probably going to get to the middle of the road kind of productivity, and you're gonna cap out.
Yeah, there are outliers. There are outliers that can do pretty well without it.
Sure,
but I would challenge, for the sake of most people, if you show me an agent that doesn't operate on a calendar, I would bet substantial amounts of money in my bank account right now that they won't get past meaningful production.
Yeah.
If they do it, it won't be sustainable.
No, that's the real key there, because you could do flashes. You're on the roller coaster trajectory of your typical agent in the first couple years. Even if you're successful in the first 2 years and you're getting enough closes to make a decent profit, you're probably, if you're not beholden to a schedule in a consistent way, you're doing this up and down in terms of production.
Well, and the catch-22 is, if you want to get past production and have a life again on your weekends, right? Because that's the main bitch about being in real estate.
You're buying your own time back.
So you have to be intentional about that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what do you have to do with your buyer business when you're a team lead? You have to delegate it out, right?
Yeah, it's about to go away for me.
So here's what's funny about the whole thing is the people that buck the calendar, they buck the time, they push back on it. If they ever find themselves in a position of leadership or management, they're going to kick themselves in their own ass, because now they have to go train and manage other agents how to use their own time.
Yeah.
And you can't lead somebody well if you're not doing it yourself.
Absolutely not.
You just can't do it. And so it's really like it's a preparation for stepping into the next position every single time. I mean, you can even look at Terry. Terry might not be great at managing his own calendar, but he literally has somebody manage his calendar for him.
That's exactly what I'm doing right now.
So he's delegated it out. So
right.
He sees the importance in it. Like, he needs to be in places at certain times. He might not be maniacally looking at it every day like I am. And I might hit some of my things more than he does, but he's still in a position where he can pay somebody else to handle putting stuff on the calendar for him.
Right.
Because he values time.
No, totally. And I don't know that I need that to have. I got to a point in my career where I was so busy that I had stood up a client at a showing, and I was like, that's it. Like, I've never done that before. I was so freaking overwhelmed that I was like, holy shit, like, I cannot allow this to happen again. So I went into the tank and was like, how can I keep this from happening again? And then I'm like, like, I need an assistant. Like, an assistant sounds like before I brought one on or started facilitating one, I was like, how? I don't know. It just felt weird. Like, I was like, because I have a problem. Most people that are in real estate sales are usually a D or type A, like, kind of personality that wants to be in control of everything they're doing. So, the first one that I had to let go of was transaction coordination. You can't scale a real estate business without having a transaction coordinator. It's impossible. Yep. That was the first shoe to drop. The second shoe to drop was the assistant, where I'm like, okay, like, it sounds ridiculous that I think that I need someone to manage my calendar, but when you get to the level that me and you are at in terms of production, there's such a taxation on the amount of time you have to devote to the people that are counting on you most, and those are your clients and your family, that you're going to let one or both of them down if you're not on top of your shit at a very high level. And when the most basic things of, oh, I'm having a conversation with someone on hey, I've got to be at such and such at such and such time. Yeah. And I'm driving, and I forget to put that shit in my calendar when I get stopped, because I'm going and shaking hands with the client at the front door of a house, and 2 hours pass and I still haven't done it, and I've forgotten all about that conversation. That's where you're like, okay, now I literally tell people, if you need something, if you need more than 15 minutes of my time, you have to go through Elizabeth. You have to call her and make it happen, and she'll put it on my calendar. And some people, even my friends, I've had to do that with, and they're like, what are you, big time at me? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and it comes off douchey as hell. I get it. But it's a necessity. And I thought it was stupid at first. I was like, I can't like tell people to call my assistant. I literally told my sister to call my assistant, and she cackled, laughed at me. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm being serious, Jess. Like, you have to, if you want my time, this is how it's going to happen. So
look, I mean, there's so many personalities and plays on the whole thing. The main thing is to just come back and saying, like, let's be intentional about what I want to build. It doesn't have to be exact same as somebody else wants to do. Like, somebody might not tell their sister to do it or to do it, but if you have 80% of your business that is being funneled through, like, I'm really managing my time well, then that's a win, right? Mm-hmm. We're getting incrementally better. So that number I showed you
what was that? I was going to ask you.
If you're making $500,000 a year,
okay,
and you divvy that up there's 1,920 hours in a normal 40-hour work week. We're probably all working more than 40 hours a week. It's also hard
certainly am.
It's also hard to quantify what work is. A lot of the time, like, this could be work, but it's kind of laid back, right?
Right.
But that's $260 an hour. So just knowing how much you work, or what your hour would be worth from a baseline, I tell most people to do that. So, like, do that. Make the calculations, divvy it up by the 40-hour work week, get your dollar per hour on what you're making or what you want to make, and then start making decisions in life based off of that. Like, it doesn't make sense for me to go mow my own grass on the weekends.
I was just about to say that. Like, I've had a yard guy for years now, and like even my neighbor who's like super old school is like, at least I mow my own lawn. And I was like, well,
If
you know,
if you like to mow your own grass,
cool.
If that's something that you like to do, you should do it.
Sure.
I don't like mowing my own
I'm
grass.
not a huge fan.
I don't like changing my own oil.
Right.
You know, like there are things like I don't really care what other people's opinions are at. I just don't at that point. But for me, it made all the sense in the world. If I can work 2 hours on a weekend, go show a house, put something under contract, I'm making $260 an hour on average. That makes more sense to me going to go, grocery shopping if I could do Instacart or something.
Right.
Pay extra for shipping.
I think that way. I mean, and what's interesting is when I was an hourly or
I also
salary.
don't like grocery shopping.
Do you not?
No, I hate it.
I love to pick out groceries. I like to feel the
eat
heads
the
of
same
lettuce
thing
and the
every day.
tomatoes.
No,
Yeah, it's cathartic for me.
you like the tomatoes.
The tomatoes especially.
It's weird,
Those
dude.
are my favorite. It is weird. In the last podcast we established this is gonna get gonna get weird.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about.
Kind of sexual.
I wasn't gonna go that weird with
It
it.
was kind of weird.
Did it feel weird to you?
felt
Did you
weird.
get the uh-oh feeling that we referenced last time?
He was
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It was weird. You said you were feeling the heads and you liked it. So there's
Wow.
that.
Well, okay then. You guys take that for what it's worth. I know what you dirty bastards are thinking.
I know what you're thinking at the grocery store.
Right?
Which is,
That's between me and the
worse.
lettuce, everyone, and the tomatoes. No, so all right. Yeah. So I mean, I get what you're saying there. I literally didn't start thinking that way until I owned my own business. When I was a salaried employee of a corporation or hourly, you don't think that way. It's just not, for me, it wasn't in my brain that way because then, let's say you're making $30 an hour. That's a hell of a lot different than what we're talking about right now.
yeah.
And
It's actually almost 7 times more.
it is almost, right there. Is it?
8.
8?
8 times 3 is 240.
There you go.
We were at 260, right?
Yeah, right.
That's actually 9. I'm an idiot.
Terrible at math. You're the dumbest person
the
I've had
integrator.
on the podcast.
P&L.
He's the absolute dumbest. What a stupid
Should have
dummy.
gone back to the P&L parts that they were talking over there. Terry, we're
Start using big words quickly. Save yourself.
Yeah.
They're out.
systems, processes,
That's right.
leverage, bandwidth.
Logistics. Oh, that's good. No, so I mean, it's interesting how your brain changes the way it views things in the perspective that you have when you are facilitating the time. And this is the thing: the older you get, the more perspective you get about how valuable your time is too, because you're running out of runway. You know that, like, okay, especially in the family arena. For me, I think about like, wow, like the more time I put into my company, the more future time I'm buying. Obviously, as a younger guy, you're thinking like that.
Yeah.
As an older person, you're thinking, or getting to become an older person, you're thinking, okay, well, I'm glad I put all these things in place prior to this so that I actually do have the time now to spend.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really interesting when you break things down that way. And I think that people would be a lot more successful starting their own businesses if they could think that way from the jump. But it takes time sometimes to kind of grasp that initial, like, aha, like, this is what I'm worth, and this is what my time is worth.
A lot of people are mastered by their emotions too, and it takes somebody that is like really they're not as easily swayed. Like, people, if you can regulate your emotions well, I think that's somebody, and you have good drive, like you have good motivation and reasons to build something, you can be a really big force to be reckoned with. A lot of people are mastered by their emotions. We can go industry by industry. Real estate's a big one. And there are real reasons why people would feel different emotions strongly. People have financial pressures. It's a hard market to work with buyers. Things aren't happening. Deals are drying up. We're 30, 40, 50% behind on units. Like, these are all real things that you would want to consider. But, the truth is, I think a lot of the entry and exit of industry or the real estate industries are emotionally charged. There's not as much logic behind it. And
How quantify that? Like, I mean, so I'm understanding this correctly. You think that it's not necessarily built upon their ability to keep and maintain a consistent business model, but you think it's more emotionally driven. How do you? I want to know more about where you're coming from with that.
I think people give up before the miracle happens a lot in real estate, and it's impulse control, a lot of it. So like we don't want to do, to go prospecting. It's kind of uncomfortable. Well, that uncomfort or that discomfort those are emotions. I made phone calls, I got rejected, it didn't happen. I'm feeling desperate or anxious. These are all underlying emotions for the whole process. But if you look at like the hundreds of thousands of agents that have gone before us and made a boatload of money, I don't know about hundreds of thousands, but like plenty of agents.
Yeah.
And the process and the pathway to get there is so clear. It's the most clear thing in the whole world. Have structured, intelligent, skilled conversations. Get better at those. Those turn into appointments. Those turn into contracts. Those turn into closings. It happens over and over and over again. There's no longer any mystery to any of this stuff. You just have to do it. And in order to do it over and over again, you have to have the ability to emotionally regulate yourself through those processes. So if you're having a bad day, I'm not even that great at this. It's just...
I agree and disagree in the same breath with what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, and I do agree with a large portion of it being emotionally driven. But I also think that there's a shitload of people that get into this industry who think that it's easy and they can just, meet and people at parties and suggest that they sell their house, and then, it just falls in their lap and there's no consistency. They've never had any discipline in their lives, and then they realize, oh, wow, I've actually got to be a driven, self-motivated, disciplined human being to make this work, and I'm none of those things.
Well, and the reason that they're not a lot of the time is it feels uncomfortable to do those things that they know that they need to do. So like
right.
The discomfort is feeling despair, feeling anxious, feeling frustrated. So like you start distilling this down into negative emotions. The ability to regulate those things and go, these feel uncomfortable. It's a part of the process. That's normal. I'm going to still do it anyway.
Right.
That's the trigger. Like, that's the real magic when you can, like, identify that and go, like, these things suck. It seems like it gets better if I get better at it. But the only way that I get better at it is if I do it. But I don't want to do it because it feels bad. So, like, you have the positive feedback loops, you have the negative feedback loops. I'm saying the emotional driven side of it they're both positive and negative. Like I was watching, I think it was like Alex Hormozy.
I don't know that guy.
Anyway,
he's got a very odd name.
Hormozy. He owns acquisitions.com. It's like $100 million net worth or something like that.
I want to know this man.
He started gym rescues where he would basically go to failing gyms and offer them like gym launch programs and turn them around.
Interesting.
He'd be worth following. But he was talking about like the three like traits of highly successful people where like they have a grandiose idea about them, like they think they're better than they are, like they believe it. Mm-hmm. They have a crippling fear of failure. In this case, it would actually be a benefit, maybe not crippling, it would actually be benefiting them. And then they have the ability to do impulse control, like high levels of impulse control. So doing things like delaying gratification, doing things you know you need to get done.
Have you read Atomic Habits yet?
I ironically have not read Atomic Habits.
I've
heard the book probably 1,000 times. Though.
It's okay. So I've gotten about a third of the way through the audio book.
Are you going to finish the book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you a book finisher?
I am if it's audio. And I actually have this one that I'm definitely going to read, and I put on my Kindle as well, and I'm going to do audio because it's so important to finish that one, and I'll talk about one later. But Atomic Habits is very, very instructive in the way that it talks about how little minute changes, and that's hence the name Atomic Habits at an atomic level, very small changes to your lifestyle and the things that you do on a daily basis can change profound things about how you operate and the habits that are either good or bad in your life. And some of the things he talks about is like that gratification, like your habit. And I mean, I'm not him, and I'm not referencing the source material in front of me, but the gist of it is that, you know, these minor changes all distill into like this formula of like, you're doing a habit because it makes you feel a certain way, whether it's good or bad. And typically it's making you feel good, even if it's a bad habit, especially some bad habits, drug use, alcohol, anything that you can trace back that's a bad habit, or sleeping too long, sleeping more than you were supposed to,
touching the produce at grocery stores.
That is my favorite bad habit, and I will never give that up. I'm reading the book. Hopefully one day I'll overcome it. The produce groping is a part of me.
Every time, but if you quantify those 10 minutes out over decades,
I know. Think of all the produce I could have touched.
A lot of produce touching, man.
I mean, that's really what I'm in this for. Not the money. I'm buying my time in front of that head of lettuce or that
Will
beautiful
just walks
tomato.
in the office like next week. He's like, guys, I think I'll be a farmer.
I mean,
I'm selling the business.
That's it, guys. That's a wrap.
I bought this plot of land.
Yeah.
Got this donkey. Me and this donkey are
Start automating it. Fresh
Yeah.
produce.
I'm gonna live in the middle lane of feeling up produce, guys. But I don't even know where I was going with that. Either way, it's interesting what you're talking about. How little things like that lead to the success.
I feel like the things I've learned from starting in real estate and going through the different phases of being in it, I could press the eject button at any point and go do something else and be successful in it based off of the things I've learned along the way.
Yeah.
And so that feels pretty cool. I mean, like I love real estate, and I think it's a great industry.
Do you like the position you're in now better than the one you had before, like as a team lead?
In production, I think,
I know they're vastly different. I wouldn't say vastly because there's a lot of similarities, but overall, it's not the same as a straight commission sales position.
Well, I think I like it for the season of life that I'm in right now. And it felt like a pretty good organic opportunity.
Yeah. I was one of your biggest cheerleaders. I mean, and not to say that I take credit for anything, but I really, as a person, I like to think that I've got a pretty decent intelligence level, and I know that you do. And I think you're incredibly creative, but you're also systemically sound. Does that make sense? So you have the ability to do two things at once, where you can organize things in a very systematic way that makes complete logical sense to get to an end result. But you also have like an artistic creativity with how you can do it, which I find to be an incredible thing, because I feel like I have the creativity to come up with something a lot of times, but to come up with the most efficient way on top of that creativity is something that I don't necessarily think that's taught, and I know you have it. Like, I've seen it at work with a lot of the way that you do things. And like today when we were talking about coming up with that system, me and Graham together, that you and Devin came up with yourselves, it really validated what we're doing to me in my eyes, because I know how brilliant you can be. And so that, to me, like, I just giving you a compliment here, because that, to me, when we came up with that on our own, I was really proud of that, because I was like, oh, wow, we just did something that Dusty did. That's pretty profound to me. So
thank you for saying those things.
yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely believe it. I mean, I thought that you're an incredible talent, and I'm really glad that you're in the position you are with our brokerage, because my future is tied to this brokerage in so many ways. And having you doing what you're doing inside of it, and look, there are some people that are not going to understand exactly what you're doing. I do, and I am really stoked about everything you've got, like, us on track for as a company as a whole. I think you're doing a fucking awesome job.
I appreciate that too.
Yeah, man.
I'm trying to just live well. I'm trying to So I was reading that Wooden on leadership. Anybody that's in a leadership position, and I know there's like we list off 8 different book titles on this one, but that one's been great. So
you told me about this one. That was it's
so
Wooden,
good.
the coach of Michigan,
UCLA. He's
UCLA. That's it. Yeah, basketball coach.
Won 10 national 10
that.
national titles, had an 88 game winning streak. So
That's not very. That's not very long.
He defines success as like true success is knowing that you did the best that you could. Like
Right.
you did the best with what you have. And the only person that knows if that's true is yourself. And so I'm trying to actually adopt that genuinely. And not just in business, but in life in general. Like I want to do well I want to be a great father. I want to be a great husband. I want to give back to my community. I want to provide value to people that I work with. I want to treat my clients well. I want to treat the staff and agents well. And I authentically mean that. And all that feels good. It like comes back into it. And it's a cool way to live. You know, I used to live it's less self-centered. I used to live really self-centered, like in my addiction. And things have creeped in along the way. So I think I had a bunch of arrogance and extra ego as I couldn't believe some of the stuff I was doing in real estate, like, you know, that I was doing well in production. A lot of that went to my head. And so I think I'm like kind of centered back into like a good season of life where I have real pathways to do stuff that I feel called to do.
Yeah, no, man, that's awesome. And that's, and you get a lot of the pushback from people saying, well, there's no true way to not do something that is not selfish in some way because you're getting a positive feedback from it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, who cares? Really? I mean, to me, it's like, look, I mean, if doing good things for good people and other people in general makes you feel good, great. That's just a byproduct of doing something that is positive, right? So, I mean, I get where people are coming from there, but I mean, so, what do you think? I mean, in that book in particular, when you read those things, I mean, did you realize you were doing them? Are you trying to apply some of those things now to how you're doing it and when you're doing it and why you're doing it?
Well, I mean, so it was just really straightforward. My job, my new role requires high levels of leadership.
Yeah.
So the next step was like, what does good leadership look like? All right, well, I should probably go figure out, maybe go read some books, listen to podcasts. What skill sets involved in it? So it's learning, discovering, and then doing it over and over again. So they say like you're not a true leader until you produce a leader that has produced leaders. So
That's an interesting concept.
So
is that in the book?
That's in the book.
Huh.
Yeah, so I mean, that's not even genius in my opinion. It's just like, what's my job description now? What am I lacking in? If I'm being totally honest with myself, what am I really lacking in? And then leadership was one of them.
And I'd like to say this. Me and you had a private conversation about this.
You're about to make public.
I'm totally gonna make it public. You made my weird fetish for. Well, no, I actually publicized my own vegetable fetish. Well, I'm gonna blame it on you so that I can justify what I'm about to say. No, but I mean it's nothing crazy. But you did say this, like when I asked you, "Hey, what are you doing with your team?" at one point, and you're like, I felt like I just wasn't a good leader, at that certain juncture that you were at when we had this conversation. It was a while back.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that was incredibly mature. I don't know. I mean, I think in my 20s, for sure, I would not have been able to be that self-aware. And even if I was self-aware, I don't know that I'd have the balls to tell someone that. But now I do. But I mean, I feel like that was an incredibly mature way to like self-analyze yourself, because I don't know that you can do what you're doing for the reasons you're doing it without having some sort of honesty about how to get there and become better. And that is something I really like that we touched on today, is that, one missing key to success for a lot of people that they don't quite get is that before you can overcome a problem, you have to be aware that it is a problem. And I mean, to me, sure, you can recognize it's a problem, but you can make excuses on how to like engineer your day around that problem, or not recognize it, or not realize, okay, well, I actually have to address the damn thing to overcome it or create a different outcome. And to me, I think that self-awareness is a very lost key. Maybe not lost, but not recognized quite to the level of what I think it should be, because I don't think that you can improve without it. I really don't. And it is not talked about a lot. That, I mean, you have to have some level of cognition when it comes to that aspect of your life. So,
for example, there was we did those surveys. We're going to start sending global surveys out to.
I thought that was a great idea too, by the way.
Well, we got a bunch of really good feedback. So we got like 20 responses out of 350 emails. So,
but that's typical, right?
Well, we'll get more as we do it more often, and it's just like anything else. We'll have to push it in the sales meeting and other stuff. But the truth is, they're 100% anonymous, and we also. I want to know what's good and what's bad. I really do. Otherwise, we don't have a pulse. So if we're bleeding agents, like last year, I think Lisa Bowles had brought in like a certain amount of agents, like maybe 100 and something agents. We started at 350, and then almost to the exact number that same year later, we were at 350. So the easy thing to do is to say, like, let's blame it on the market. It's a high churn industry, blah, 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 blah. These are all true. But you need to know. Like, you should know why they're leaving.
Absolutely.
And so we just want to do that we have an internal facing survey through EOS. So I can send this out to all of our staff members and go, how do you feel how our organization is running? Then we have a survey for all the agents. You collect this data, you start seeing trends. But one of the feedback on the survey was it was that Dusty talks at us and not with us, right? There was like a little blurb in there. And so it immediately like dinged. I was like, ugh.
Right.
It hurts a little bit. But if I'm being honest with myself, I do that sometimes. And so it's the same thing going back to leading my team in the early stages of it. It's like everybody already knows. Everybody already knows I wasn't. It's obvious. Like, you can't hide. The worst thing you can do with your own shit is to act like it doesn't smell.
Right. For
you
sure.
want to be aware of it and then deal with it accordingly. Like, nobody likes the person that's like, my doesn't smell, right?
Yeah.
That's it. I just know how I interact with people where I'm like, oh, that person's arrogant, won't receive help, they're closed off, they're closed-minded. A few names like start popping up to, in the old noggin up here. You're like, well, I don't want to be like them.
What Dusty is not telling you is that he took that fucking knife and he killed that person with it.
Yeah. I was gathering that, yes.
Right.
Yes.
They're dead now.
Yeah.
That was it for them. Problem solved.
I'm a murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Done.
It's all over.
It's over.
Just completely in line with me, the whole other life goals that I have.
Absolutely.
Good
I mean,
father,
yeah, right.
Good husband,
Murder.
killing people I disagree with,
Right.
giving back to the
Absolutely.
community. In a way, it's kind of giving back to the community.
It is. That guy
They
who
needed to
or
be
girl,
dealt with.
yeah, they had to be erased from existence, and we're all better off for it.
Yeah, and that's something that I appreciate about Terry is that he's pretty open to criticism. He's pretty even keeled. If you bring something up to him, or like, he's non-reactive. You can't afford to be a reactive leader.
Oh, totally. I mean, and that is something that I have to really
Dude, it's
get.
tough, man.
Yeah, man, it is really hard.
Because there's people that you invest in, they might bail. Or there's like people that you pour in over and over again, they're not doing the same thing, and then maybe they're complaining on the other side, or just not getting it. Whatever it is, like, we're all emotional humans. It's tough to not react. I don't do it perfectly, but I'm better than I ever have been.
Yeah, and that is incredibly personal for me, because that is something I'm very self-aware of being a weakness. I think I view it as a weakness because I want to be less reactive. The balance for me is that I feed off of emotions in the form of energy, and I use it as a motivating factor a lot of times. Like, I can go back to my sports days where like I mess up and then I like focus that anger that I have with myself for making the mistake into pure energy to correct it and to do it harder and better than I've ever done it before. But that's a very double-edged sword for me because it makes me highly susceptible to reactive feedback when I'm talking to people about something that's high level, I would say it has high chances of injuring me in an emotional way. Not like they're purposely doing it, but taking something personal and then having a reaction to that instead of having a measured response. And I think that one of the lessons I've taken from Terry, because he's incredibly good at that. Terry's got a lot of cool things about him that I've taken away. I think that
he plays golf like an old man, though.
But he kicked my ass in Orlando. He was teeing off with an iron.
Yeah,
okay, that is.
It's classic old guy stuff.
Yeah, that's an old guy move. Yeah, pop, gonna pop Terry coming in hot. The iron, a 3-iron off the tee. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, man. I mean, he's got the wiggle. You know about the wiggle? It's like at the Steph Curry wiggle at the tee box. But yeah, I mean, that's something. Not being reactive is probably one of the hardest things to to fix that I've ever tried to fix, and I'm still in a constant state of.
I think being
trying.
able to find a good mentor in life, not life, business, other stuff, like having real people that have been there, and that. Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like it's flattery in a lot of sense, like. People want to get back, especially after they've made it. I mean, there's only so much you can get for yourself until you realize it hasn't filled you up like you want it to fill you up.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
And then there's I'm not that much happier today than I was when I was making 5 times less than what I'm making. I'm just not. So along the way, I've got more stuff, and I'm like, that's all. I'm not saying I don't want more, or I'm not saying that I'm not trying to grow bottom lines. I just am aware of, like, at a certain point, there should be a bucket to give back, and there should be people in your life that you can go to and ask for help. So, being intentional about seeking out mentors has been. Terry's been a great business mentor.
Yeah.
I have people in other areas of my life that I go to for help and guidance and stuff.
Surrounding yourself with the right people has been one of the all-time best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I want to say a lot has to do with the things that I have done and what makes me up as a person, I would say an equal to or a greater portion, to be honest with you, is attributable to the people that I surround myself with.
Yeah, it gets even cooler when you're able to give back to other people.
Oh, totally.
Like you were given to it. That's the coolest part.
Oh, yeah. I've felt that as a team lead. When you knew me before I was, we were I think you had just started the team when I first met you, and I was an independent agent, and I had no wishes to become a team leader. And then, I mean, it just made business sense to move forward, and I just didn't know how I'd want to do, if I wanted to do it or not at the time. And then, yeah, as I started coaching people and showing them how to do the things that I learned and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn in the real estate school of hard knocks, and I was able to impart that knowledge free of charge to these people, that gave me a level of fulfillment that I'm still like cruising on to this day.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good spot to end it up right there. What do you think? Where are we at? We at the 1 hour mark?
Hour in almost 5 minutes.
Man, I'm getting
pretty good.
I got the Kramer internal clock, man, on that.
Good.
Dusty.
An hour. The Joe Rogan ones are what, like
3 hours?
3-4 hours now.
I mean,
get wild. Dude.
Yeah, we listened to the Eric Weinstein thing all the way to Orlando because we're constantly taking calls, me and Graham, and I kept looking over and I'm like, hey man, this is some dirty shit.
I've been liking the Huberman ones, but those have started getting like.
They're long.
2, 3, 4
I mean, look,
hours,
an hour I think is a solid deal. I mean, some of them will bleed off
you
a
got
little
like
bit longer.
bookmark it and be like, go back to the
Yeah, absolutely. Man, thank you so much for being here. I really love you coming on.
you.
Yeah, we've got a lot of like cool stuff out of this one. I think it's a pretty high level one that we've done.
I like it.
I hope that all the listeners out there will definitely take away from this in a really awesome way. And that is a wrap. Please like, Subscribe. Have you subscribed?
I did subscribe.
Yes.
As soon as you sent it over, I did.
All right, there you go.
Well, I subscribed to the old channel, and then I was like, oh.
Is that part of giving back? Is that charity? I don't want
No,
your
when
stupid
people-
charity.
When people ask me to do it, I'll do it. It's like if you ask people for reviews,
That's
they give
true.
you reviews too, right?
That's
Hey,
true.
if you guys do this,
Gotta
real quick,
ask for
it
the
would-
business.
It would mean the world to us if you took 2 minutes.
Hey, guys, in that note, it would mean the world to me if you would take just a couple of minutes and
Like, comment, subscribe,
subscribe,
share.
all that good stuff.
Transfer
YouTube,
it over to a VHS
Spotify.
tape.
We had some technical difficulties on Spotify last week. We hope to rectify this week, but we should be on all the platforms across the board, right, Jeffrey?
Which grocery
Yeah.
store do you shop at?
I'm not going to tell you. That's a private question. That's a very personal question.
You guys just might want to second
All right.
guess anything in the chat.
We're going to end it here. Abort. Later, guys.